Out of sync. Over the years, I have observed a recurrent failure in the Homo sapiens species to get itself in sync. For example, two nations will decide to have a war, and each will send a great army to the wrong place at the wrong time, and they won't be able to find each other. This is enormously embarrassing to the generals, although the troops don't mind, often saying to each other, "Phew, whew, that was a close one." My dictionary defines sync as an act or instance of synchronizing. It defines synchronizing as 1. To occur or exist at the same time, 2. To operate at the same rate or simultaneously. Sync is what I am out of. Always have been, always will be. My fishing and the fish biting, for example, almost never occur or exist at the same time. You would think that during all the years I've spent hunting, I and a trophy elk would show up at the same place at the same time, but that has never happened. As far as I can tell, elk are even more out of sync than I am. Wonderful sales on outdoor gear occur or exist at the very times a surplus in my bank account does not occur or exist. In shooting, I have discovered that my shot and the game do not arrive at a given spot at the same time. "I'm just out of sync," I tell my friends. "You're just a bad shot," they reply. My friends know next to nothing about sync. My fishing buddy, Keith Jackson, is seriously out of sync, too. For many years, we didn't realize that we were both out of sync, and a good deal of confusion resulted. The most extreme case of this confusion occurred on a fishing trip to the Olympic Peninsula. The first bit of out-of-syncness resulted in our not being able to leave at the same time on the 400-mile drive to the fishing place. I had to leave a day later. Jackson said that was all right. He would haul the boat and have the fish all scouted out by the time I arrived. He then gave me a complicated set of directions as to the time and place of the rendezvous. "I'll meet you by the Brown farmhouse 2 miles past the dairy at 5:30 in the morning," he said. "Right," I said. I drove all night and arrived in the general area of the rendezvous at 4 in the morning, only to discover that the entire region was saturated with dairies. Furthermore, residual darkness prevented me from determining the color of the houses. I thought about getting out of the car, tiptoeing over to a likely-looking house, and holding a lighted match up next to the siding to determine its color. Crazy thoughts like that often pop into a fisherman's mind while at peak anxiety over missing a fishing trip. What gave me pause, however, was the mental image of a farmer coming out of his house, groggy with sleep, and irritated at having to milk a bunch of dumb cows who are eating him into bankruptcy, only to find a stranger holding a lighted match to his sidings. "Just checking the color of your house paint," I'd explain. "Yep," the farmer would say, turning to his Great Dane. "Get him, boy." By 5:30, I was parked in front of a likely-looking brown house, one of approximately 15 brown houses in the area. "Maybe this isn't the right brown house," I said to myself. "Probably it's that brown house I passed 2 miles back." I then raced off to that brown house. Then I thought of another brown house. It had to be the one, and so on. For the next 3 hours, I drove frantically from one brown house to another. No Jackson. Meanwhile, Jackson is parked in front of a brown house, frantically watching the minutes of his fishing time tick away. "I'll just bet that stupid McManus is parked in front of the brown house by the old Smith dairy. I'd better go check." He roars off. 5 minutes later, I arrive at the brown house he just left. Jackson sees that I'm not at the old Smith dairy brown house and roars back to his original brown house, which I have just left to check the brown house at the old Smith dairy. All this we calmly figured out later, after trying to beat each other with tire irons. By 8 o'clock, Jackson had sunken into a state of blathering insanity, in which condition he was suddenly possessed by the irresistible urge to go fishing without me. Half an hour later, he was trolling alone for salmon in Puget Sound. Such was the depth of his madness. At 10 o'clock, I gave up on brown houses and drove down to the nearest boat launch. There was Jackson's pickup and his empty boat trailer. Why, I said to myself, that rascal has gone fishing without me. I'm not sure rascal is the exact word I used, but it will do for here. Naturally, I assumed that Jackson never had any intention of meeting me at a brown house, but instead had just gone fishing. Being a reflective person, I hunkered in the sand and reflected about what to do next. Letting the air out of all of Jackson's tires seemed to dominate my reflections, but I decided to give him one more chance. Since by now I was starving, I wrote a note saying, "I have gone to the Singing Salmon Cafe to eat breakfast." I put this note on Jackson's windshield. After breakfast, I drove back to the launch. I parked my car next to his rig, got out, turned over the note on his windshield, and wrote, "I am asleep in my car next to your rig." So Jackson returns from his morning of fishing and gets in his pickup. He reads the note through the windshield. The note says, "I have gone to the Singing Salmon Cafe to eat breakfast." He grabs the note off the windshield, wads it up, and heads for the Singing Salmon Cafe, no doubt intending to give me the thrashing he thinks I so richly deserve for making him miss 3 hours of the best fishing time. I wake up a short while later. Jackson's truck and trailer are gone. He has deliberately ignored my note. I now realize that Jackson not only has sent me on a wild goose chase for a mythical brown house and has gone fishing without me, he is going to great lengths to avoid me. I know that he is involved in something he doesn't want me to know about. He's afraid I'll tattle to his wife. Ha! What kind of a person does he think I am? I leap in my car and begin the return of the 800-mile round trip, never once having set eye on Jackson or put lure in water. "Just wait, Jackson," I growl to myself. "Just wait until your wife hears what sort of hijinks you've been up to." After that misadventure, Jackson and I realized that we were both hopelessly out of sync with each other. So we worked out a plan. No matter where we intend to meet for a fishing trip, Jackson says, "I'll meet you by the brown farmhouse." "Right," I say. We now know that it doesn't make any difference what brown farmhouse or where the brown farmhouse is, because we would never arrive at the same time and place anyway. We just go off on our own individual fishing trips. There's about as much chance we'll meet up that way as if we had synchronized for a rendezvous. In fact, probably a better chance. My whole family has never been in sync about anything, but particularly in regard to fishing. I recall the time my stepfather, Hank, and my mother had a little spat. Hank was steaming mad, and he told Mom, "Dang it, woman, I'm going down and fish the creek and get myself some peace and quiet." "Good," Mom shouted. "Maybe that'll cool you off." Hank stormed out of the house, banging the screen door as loudly as he could. Mom sat around seething and speaking ill of Hank. "That old fool, I don't know what I ever saw in him. He's so stubborn and opinionated, and I don't know what all." After a bit, however, her rage subsided, and she began to think more kindly of Hank. "He's a hard worker, though, I'll say that for him," she said. "I guess he's not so bad." I thought I'd put in a good word for Hank to speed reconciliation along. "Yeah, and he's not all that stubborn and opinionated, if you ask me." "Nobody asked you. If stubborn was hay and opinions were cows, we'd have the biggest farm in the county. What I ever saw in that man, I'll never know." Forget I mentioned it. By late afternoon, Hank still hadn't returned from fishing. He was getting along in years, and I could tell Mom was sorry about their argument and was beginning to worry about Hank. Then a thunderstorm blew in, and rain began to pound down in torrents. "Oh, good heavens," Mom cried. "Poor Hank will get soaking wet. Where could he be? I think I'll drive up to the bridge. If he's there, I can give him a ride home." She rushed out of the house and drove off. Hank, meanwhile, was dry and comfortable, sitting under the thick foliage of a huge cedar tree, puffing contentedly away on his pipe and waiting for the storm to pass. The bridge was about 200 yards away. As he stared vacantly in that direction, he saw Mom drive up in our car, which she turned around and parked on the bridge. Aha, he thought. She has driven out here to pick me up and make amends. She is not such a bad woman after all, even if she is excessively stubborn and opinionated. Hank then rushed out into the storm, the icy rain plastering his clothes to his body as he galloped along. His lucky fishing hat blew off into the creek. As he grabbed for it, he tripped over a log and fell flat on his face in a mud puddle. Putting off howling with pain and nursing his injured leg until later, he leaped up and fought his way through a thorn thicket, emerging from which he dropped into a drainage ditch, the greenish ooze reaching almost to his armpits. Hauling himself out on a rusty strand of barbed wire fence, he punctured random parts of his anatomy on the barbs, but nothing could detain him in his rush toward the car and amends with Mom. Finally, he hurled his torn, bleeding, gasping, freezing body onto the road and limped hurriedly to within 3 feet of the car's rear bumper, a pained smile of gratitude for Mom's thoughtfulness quivering on his blue lips. At that moment, my mother, seeing no sign of Hank either up or down the creek, calmly drove off. Had she but looked in her rear-view mirror, she would have seen a rain-blurred, frenzied figure limping wildly down the road, but Mom didn't believe in rear-view mirrors. There's no point in looking back, she liked to say. You might see something gaining on you. In this case, the something would have been Hank. Even with a bad leg, the man could move fast if he was mad enough. Once, Keith Jackson asked me how I'd ever got so out of sync. I inherited the tendency, I said. Got it from my mother. How about you? Caught it from one of my fishing partners. Anyway, let's go fishing tomorrow. Meet you at the Brown House. Right, I said. The Brown House.